even I, Buck Sexton, am stunned a bit by how just absolutely political driven Democrats have suddenly recognized masking is after all their talk about how they were going to be using the science to justify what they did or did not do as it pertained to COVID. Friday, the CDC effectively does away with the mask mandates. Saturday and Sunday, you got New York City, and now you add in California, Washington, and Oregon doing away with school mask mandates. It is so much laced with lying that even I, Buck, am a little bit surprised over how blatantly just deceitful this process is now that masks are finally coming off. And this is why, for every single person out there, we have got to hold all of these politicians accountable for the failures of their forcing our kids to wear masks and beyond.
Clay, Joe Biden was videoed today,
yes,
walking into the White House outside alone with a mask on. And I just want to remind everybody, this is lunacy, okay?
Yes.
There is no basis for this. There was never a basis for this. This, a long time ago, almost 2 years ago, became the leftist version of the MAGA hat. You wear a mask, you comply, you're part of the left-wing Borg, for those of you who are Star Trek fans, or the left-wing hive. That was what this was all about. It's so obvious now. It has been obvious to you and me for a long time. There were not a lot of people, even on the right, back when I got to give credit to my friend, my producer, Mark, who told me he was a big fan of Outkick and your work on the sports side. And he told me this is before anyone had ever talked about Clay and I teaming up on radio. He said, you got to talk to Clay Travis. He agrees with you on masks. And I was like, well, at least there's somebody else. So this was 2 years ago. I mean, I almost want to go back in the archives and find the exact dates. We could have the 2-year anniversary of it. I'm like, Clay, you came on. We had a great discussion about it, and we were right, which is also, that's nice. It's nice to be right. Clay, they just put out some guidance. I did not believe it was true. But did you see this? It has been confirmed to me by our friend Ryan
I put
Grodowski.
this out last night. You talking about the nuclear attack?
If you are in the midst of a nuclear attack, folks, make sure you mask up and socially distance in the bunker. That is from the Biden administration. That is a real thing that they have done. I actually did not believe it at first. I thought it was Steven Seagal going in with the Russians to fight for Putin like fake, as in it was not real. Turns out it was real. These people have lost their minds, and that is why ABC News chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl, Clay, is pointing out Republicans have, you know what, how big an advantage? Listen to this.
More concerning for Joe Biden and for Democrats generally is if you look at our latest poll out today, the percentage of voters saying that they will vote for Republicans in the midterm elections is at the highest level that we have seen since 2010. And you know what happened in 2010. 2010 is when Republicans won 63 seats and swept in control of the House in the Tea Party wave. So Biden needs to change the trajectory. He needs to acknowledge the challenges and present some kind of a vision that shows that he has a plausible plan for dealing with the challenges facing the country.
Anything less than 60 seats for the Republicans in this midterm as Joe Biden dodders around, wandering confused with his mask on outside. Less than 60 seats, we did not hit our mark. 60 seats or more.
I just wish that we could have the election right now. You know, I mean, to your point, and you've been on this for a while, a lot can change over the next 7 or 8 months, right? Let's be honest. We're about to hit to March, and we got to go all the way to the first week in November. And my concern is just that a lot of people who are angry today, justifiably, the Democrats are basically showing you their hand. They're saying, hey, we need to make changes on COVID right now so that we can hope 6 months from now people are over their anger and they don't take it out on us. That's their game plan. We cannot allow that to happen. This is, Buck, you said it earlier, and I think you're right. Everybody should be a single issue voter right now. And that issue is Democrats failed on COVID.
Yes.
And if you don't hold them accountable, I understand there are all different sorts of issues that people care about, a huge panoply of issues that are important in America today. But the number one issue that I believe everybody has to be voting on is your elected officials failed you. They failed your kids. They failed your economy. Everything directly ties into COVID. And so if you are voting for a Democrat, you are voting in support of the COVID insanity over the past 2 years, and there have to be consequences. There have to be. They were wrong, and when you are an elected official and you get something this important, this wrong, you have to pay the consequences.
We're going to play that essay because now you're going to see a rewriting of history, a slow walk back, soft pedaling as we move into the future. What's happened here?
The federal government updated their guidance for how people should respond if a nuclear explosion happens. You saw this, right?
Yeah,
this is 100% real.
When the thermonuclear bombs land, Clay, I want to make sure there are no COVID droplets in the air.
They have updated how you should respond to a nuclear explosion based on COVID. I'm reading directly from government websites. First of all, I wanted to read this sentence because I think it's amazing. Many people may already feel fear and anxiety about COVID-19. This is the next line on the official government website. The threat of a nuclear explosion can add additional stress. I'm reading this official government website.
True.
Buck. Many people, they say, already feeling fear and anxiety about COVID. The threat of a nuclear explosion can add additional stress. All right, this is actually on the website. Here's a couple of other things you might want to know. By the way, they did a nuclear. Did you do nuclear drills when you were a kid?
I don't think we did those, but I know they used to do them before. You're a little older than me.
Yeah, I'm 3 years older. I don't remember if we did nuclear drills, but my son, they did nuclear drills at his school recently. Do you know what they did in the drill, Buck? They climbed underneath the desk. That's the nuclear drill. That's the way you're going to protect yourself, all right? Well, by the way, spoiler alert, if a nuclear bomb goes off near you, you're probably going to die no matter what preparations or precautions you take, all right? But this is official advice from our government. Stay away from outer walls and roof, okay, if a nuclear bomb hits. Also this, Buck, this is real. Try to maintain a distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and people who are not part of your household. If possible, wear a mask if you're sheltering with people who are not part of your household. You got to be concerned about COVID when a nuclear bomb goes off?
Clay, if I'm going to go through nuclear winter, I don't want to have to worry about a sniffle for 3 or 4 days, as well as the destruction of all living things on the planet. So, yeah, I'm double masking in the nuclear bomb shelter. Thank you. I take the virus seriously, even with an extinction-level event.
Here's another part of the advice. If you're experiencing a medical emergency, call 911. Now, first of all, I don't know that 911 is going to be that response. I love the people who work at 911, but if a nuclear bomb goes off, I don't think you're probably going to be able to get very many people on 911. But just so you know, this is the official advice. Call 911. By the way, also wonder whether the phone lines might be working. But if you can call 911, hey, a nuclear bomb just went off. They want you to know, if you can, put on a mask before help arrives. The nuclear bomb just blew up. You call 911. The official advice is, if you can, put on a mask before help arrives. Yeah. I mean, this,
Clay,
it's all such madness.
Severe radiation poisoning from the end of life as we know it in a massive nuclear war is no excuse to expose people to a virus with a 99.97% survival rate. I mean, we need to be serious about these COVID restrictions in the nuclear bomb shelter.
I mean, imagine being a nuclear bomb hit, and you guys think we're like, I mean, obviously this is the official government website that I'm reading off. This is 100% real. But there have been people talking about the low vaccination rates in Ukraine and how they should be concerned about COVID. Literally, bombs are landing in Ukraine everywhere, and there are COVID fear porn purveyors on social media who are like, man, things are going to get really serious. They may have an issue with COVID going forward when literally bombs are landing on them.
I'll also tell you this, I've heard this from some practicing doctors recently, not public health officials on TV, but just as this is making me think of it, Clay, the same way that this has become a religious belief, obviously, for a lot of people. You wear the mask to show that you're a good person. You wear the mask to show your compliance with the state's wishes, even in a nuclear annihilation situation, which is remarkable. But with all that, we are going to find out, and I think that there's a slowness, there's a hesitation to get to the bottom of it. We've already started to see it, though, that serious, meaning stage 3, stage 4 cancers are going to be substantially, because you're really seeing it. It takes a while before that data comes together and before people, and I think they don't want to analyze it, because particularly during the lockdown phase, the first year of the pandemic, and then even I think when you look at it over the last 6 months, when we had another round of COVID panic, what they'll find is that the same mentality of make sure you mask up when you're in the nuclear bunker, which obviously we're making fun of because it is truly absurd and farcical, but that mentality of COVID at all costs had very real costs for people who didn't have the cancer screenings, the cancer treatment that they would have as early. Timing matters, as anybody who's had cancer or a family member with it knows. And so, that's the other part of this. These decisions were not without massive consequence. It's not just they were wrong and this is an academic exercise, right? It's not just Dr. Wynn and Fauci and Walensky are political hacks who weaponized the science to get compliance and power in the hands of the left and the Democrat Party. That is all obviously true. There was real suffering, and this is why I feel like we do have this mission because if there's no accountability in this midterm, there's never accountability.
Consequences.
If we don't,
consequences.
If people aren't getting fired, if people aren't professionally humiliated because they were cowards or they went along with the propaganda, this year it's never happening. And, they told people that they couldn't say goodbye to grandma except maybe over Zoom if they were lucky, because everybody had these policies that, a 12-year-old couldn't go into the hospital because COVID was so dangerous. They made people lose their jobs. They kicked people out of the military. They made people skip cancer screenings and treatments early on. For what? For what? More than you see the CDC data on seroprevalence, which is just a fancy way of saying blood testing that looks at antibody levels to determine infection rates. Seroprevalence nationwide, about 50%. This is how good our mitigation was in this country. About half the country got COVID, they think. By the way, I actually think the number's higher.
I think it's way higher.
I think it's more like 60
by the
or
time
70.
we get done with Omicron, because so many people got Omicron, and the huge majority of people that got Omicron, thankfully, didn't even know they had it. I mean, we had Alex Berenson on yesterday saying that the data out of England showed that something like 98% of kids had antibodies to COVID in England. I mean, most kids, thankfully, got Omicron and never knew they had it. I mean, you and I both had Omicron. A huge percentage of our listeners did.
Omicron
and
for
many
me
people didn't ever get tested.
Was a mild sniffle.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so angry because I wanted to go. We had that great event. I'm glad you were able to hold the Clay and Buck flag up for everybody and hang out in Fort Myers. But I knew,
right.
It's COVID. Mild sniffle. In
Yep.
a pre-COVID era, it would have been like, look, this can't be, how could this be dangerous?
You would
to
have
anybody?
traveled. You wouldn't have even thought twice about it.
It's crazy. We want to take your calls, and we'll get to that. And then we'll also do a bit of a reset in the third hour of both the latest on Ukraine and then the State of the Union tonight. A bit more of what we think you should expect and also what the days ahead will look like after this, considering I think the Biden administration is going to get increasingly desperate